Guys, so Brian Mbeumo has been announced and he's expected to be on the plane tomorrow for pre-season tour in America. We get to see him play very soon. And he said, as soon as I knew there was a chance to join Manchester United, I had to take the opportunity to sign for the club of my dreams. And reports even came out saying he rejected Chelsea for this move. Cunha in, Mbeumo in. That's two absolutely brilliant signings. I know it was pricey. I know it took its time, but Manchester United have signed two brilliant players. But David Ornstein has dropped a bomber today and revealed the next three signings Manchester United have planned. He's revealed some outlines of United's transfer plan, suggested Rasmus Hojlund could be leaving. Romano drops a big news story on Garnacho and Nicholas Jackson. We get updates on Sancho, saying it's not as close as what Duncan Castles was saying earlier, as well as Mbeumo rejecting a last-minute Chelsea hijack. So this is a massive 10-minute roundup show where we're going to round up all the latest Manchester United news that's come out today that's relevant from good sources in 10 minutes. I do this every evening throughout the transfer window when there is news, rounding up all the news in 10 minutes for you guys. So if you do like it, subscribe. Let's get into it. So Sully revealed this morning that Mbeumo was going to be announced around 8 p.m. tonight. So well done, Sully. You got that absolutely spot on. Sorry if I just lagged out there, but Sully revealed earlier today that Brian Mbeumo would be announced at 8 o'clock, and he was absolutely spot on. Brian Mbeumo has been announced, and Sully's also mentioned that today Brian Mbeumo was training with Xerxes. They were doing some strength and conditioning training. Xerxes obviously got a minor injury that he's working to get through, and he did reveal that Mbeumo's likely to be on the plane tomorrow ahead of the pre-season tour. So that is the second signing in the door, and I do want to talk about what to expect from Manchester United next, but I'm very happy with that, and I just want to talk about a few details with this Mbeumo deal. Now it's been announced, it's been revealed, and then we could discuss more. But I thought this was an interesting report from Chris Wheeler, which really shows how much Mbeumo wanted United, and I think the fact that he rejected multiple Champions League clubs for us is a massive green flag that he really wanted us. And they'll try and make out it's about wages and stuff, and they'll try and make out we're giving him crazy wages, but we all know that is not the case. They're just trying to make that out rival clubs to make themselves feel better that Man United still have Paul. It was said, Chelsea made a late attempt to hijack the Mbeumo deal. Mbeumo came under pressure from Brentford to listen to rival offers from Tottenham. There was also interest from Arsenal and Newcastle. There's sort of reports coming out, I think Rob Dawson said something as well, about Manchester United not being happy with Brentford during this negotiation process, how Brentford had set a price tag, we'd matched that price tag. There was a lot of indications given that Brentford were going to accept the second bid, then all of a sudden probably saw what Alanga went for and Madueke price tag and decided they wanted more. United in their second bid reached what Brentford were originally asking for. Brentford gave indications they were going to accept that, then raised the price tag quite a bit. So United were getting frustrated with Brentford during this process. Brentford also put a pressure on Mbeumo to try and not go to Manchester United, try and go elsewhere, maybe try and go to Spurs. I think Brentford wanted more of a bidding war, and even Chelsea made a late attempt to try and hijack this deal, but Mbeumo made it clear he only wanted Manchester United, which is good to see. But let's get into the Ornstein news, and let's get into what Manchester United's plans are now. So David Ornstein drops a bit of a bomb, and he said that in no particular order, United will focus on a goalkeeper. This does not mean Onana will leave, a DM and a striker. David Ornstein has revealed, before the end of the transfer window, we want a goalkeeper, a striker, and a DM. Why is this big news? We're going to talk about the targets. We're going to talk about who we need. This is big news for me because I was saying in my live show this morning, if you watched it, we need a DM, a striker, and a goalkeeper. We need a DM, striker, and goalkeeper. I said, look, wing back would be nice. Another centre back for depth would be nice, but we need a DM, striker, and goalkeeper. And I've had concerns that we're neglecting the DM position. So for someone with David Ornstein's credibility to come out and say United will focus on the DM, they want a midfield signing. We also want a goalkeeper, even if Onana stays, is big. We know from Ornstein and Romano we're going for a striker. Romano suggested the striker was next. Ornstein saying striker's not necessarily next. I wouldn't be shocked if Lamens the next signing. Pre-season tour, no Onana on pre-season tour. Bayend is expected to go. Cheaper deal to do. I wouldn't be surprised if Lamens was our next signing. I really wouldn't. But we could go for a midfielder before a striker, and that's not the end of the world. We'd need both. But if the striker market's difficult, let's not put midfield on hold till we get a striker, then go for a midfielder when someone like Javi Guerrera could be gone by then. Jasari could be gone by then. Richard Rios has already gone. Let's say, you know what? Let's focus on sales. Obviously, sales would be important if we can get some sales over the line. But let's try and use this opportunity to bring in a midfielder if there's a good one on the market. You know, striker, cool, but David Ornstein saying there's no particular order. I think it's good for United. Do what you can, bring in who you can bring in, but these are the 3 positions we need. I saw H make a good point on Twitter. Amran said we lack speed in the centre of our first preseason game. Get a midfielder, please. Anyone that watched that first preseason game said, look, as good as Bruno Fernandes is, and as good as Casemiro did step up last season, they could not play in the pivot together. I'd like to see Zach Koenig get opportunities, but we cannot rely on the kid. We need someone that, one, can progress the ball in midfield, but two, has that speed and power that we lack. We almost need someone that has the physicality of a human, but the progressive passing ability of a Stiller. The perfect midfielders for me would be someone like Tonali. We're never getting him. But Baleba, I don't know if we can afford Baleba. I don't think we can. But I think if you can't get Baleba, maybe you look at Javi Guerrero type player. Maybe we'll look at Edison purely for speed and mobility. But Amorim clearly doesn't rate Agati that highly. He's not really playing Mbeumo deeper. And I think with the centre-back stepping up in build-up, we might as well play Mbeumo deeper to help with the build-up issues. I think Mbeumo's the best option we have next to Bruno. But then there's physicality issues there, especially with just 2 of them to cover. You could play Mbeumo and Bruno in a midfield 3, but in a midfield 2, there's physicality issues there. We almost need the technical ability of Mbeumo, but maybe the physical abilities of Agate. We need to blend them into 2 players. So Man United really need a midfielder. Aston Villa have interest in Garnacho. Could we look at Amadou Onana? Could we? I don't know. If Chelsea are willing to sell Santos, that could be a good option to explore. But look, the dream is Baleba. The dream for me is Carlos Baleba because he's got the physical and technical attributes that we need. He's a powerhouse. I think he'd be a fantastic addition. I think he'd be better than Wharton. I think he'd be better than Stiller. But I can't see Brighton letting this guy go for anywhere less than £80 million. And unfortunately, I don't think Man United have this kind of money on the market to invest in the market right now. Continuing on into a mega swap deal that United could be planning. Now, David Ornstein actually revealed different striker targets. David Ornstein revealed that Sesko and Watkins were sort of the striker targets. And he said that we want players, maybe not striker next, but we want a striker. Romano is suggesting maybe Nicholas Jackson could be that guy. Romano did say that Man United have not decided yet which striker to go for, but Fabrizio Romano is coming out and he's dropping some pretty big stories here on Nicholas Jackson. He said the name Nicholas Jackson is really tempting United and they could offer Chelsea Garnacho in a swap deal. Internal talks are ongoing. I've said since the Nicholas Jackson links 10 days ago, I wouldn't be shocked if United tried a swap deal with Chelsea. I said that. I wouldn't be shocked. And guess what? 10 days later, Romano's now suggesting there's talks of a swap deal. Man United, I think, is seriously considering a Garnacho-Jackson swap deal. Romano's saying there's talks going on. We might have not chosen Jackson yet. We might be, and we don't want to say we've chosen Jackson because Chelsea could get a better deal that way. We could say we're looking at Sesko and Watkins, but Jackson is there as a third choice. So we can maybe get the better end of the swap deal. But Romano's saying it's tempting United. There could be a big, insane mega swap deal involving Garnacho and Nicholas Jackson. And I don't know how I feel about it. I think if you get money and Jackson for Garnacho, I like it. But I feel like if they're 2 players valued equally, I don't like it. Garnacho is worth more than Jackson in the market, in my opinion. The interesting thing that I wanted to mention, pardon me, was that Ornstein said in The Athletic today that Sesko and Watkins are the names on United's list. Ornstein is saying Sesko and Watkins. Romano is now linking us to Nicholas Jackson. I think Jackson is one to watch, but Ornstein is suggesting Watkins and Sesko. Romano is now heavily suggesting Jackson. Romano is very well connected with Chelsea. Chelsea feed him a lot of information. Florian Plettenberg and other sources in Italy have even mentioned Moise Kean. They're the 4 striker targets. I think Watkins, Jackson, and Sesko. I think United will look to sign one of those 3 players. I think United will look to sign either John Victor or Lamens, and I think United will look to sign a midfielder. They held talks with Ndidi, hopefully not him. They have interest in Edison, but hopefully we get linked to some better midfield targets. Richard Rios has gone. Jasari doesn't seem super credible. Javi Guerrero would be a nice one if it comes back to it. But Man United signing a striker, clearly they want that to happen. Romano's pretty much said positively that United will sign a striker. That's the goal. Could Hojlund be on the way out? Ornstein said, despite Rasmus Hojlund's desire to stay, there's a good chance he will leave this summer. Interestingly, Laurie Whitwell, who also works for The Athletic, said Hojlund is more likely to leave Manchester United than stay. Hojlund wants to stay, that's been made clear. Man United want to sell Hojlund, Man United want to sign a striker. I think if we sign a striker, Hojlund's going to get less minutes, especially with Mbeumo and Cunha able to play striker. I think Hojlund could be on the way out. I think he could go on loan more than a permanent because a permanent deal will be difficult, but it will be good to see. Anyway, the last thing David Ornstein mentioned was, despite me reporting in my live stream earlier today that a tier 1 source in Duncan Castle said Sancho to Juventus is not close. Ornstein is saying otherwise. And while Duncan Castles has been very credible and spot on lately, you've got to believe Ornstein over anyone else, because Ornstein is probably the journalist out there. And he's saying, sadly, Sancho to Juventus is not close. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. Bye.